This is our appointment session. So we are joined now with Jennifer Katz. She's a Deputy General Counsel for Governor Moore. She's served in that capacity since January 2023. Prior to that, she served as Principal Counsel to the Maryland Higher Education Commission and was a Senior AAG in the Civil Litigation Division of the AG's office. She started her career clerking for the Honorable Catherine Blake on the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland, and then clerked for the Honorable Diana Gribben-Motz on the U.S. Court of Appeals for Fourth Circuit. She graduated summa cum laude from the University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law. Welcome, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Happy to be here.
We also have Jamie Johnson, who is the Outreach Director with the Office of Appointments for Governor Moore. She is a dedicated public service and community advocate with a lifelong passion for uplifting underserved communities. As the Outreach Director for Governor Moore, she plays a pivotal role in fostering engagement and creating opportunities for residents across the state. She's a proud Baltimore native, and she has deep-rooted commitment to service and has earned recognition for her work in education, nonprofit leadership, and civic engagement. She previously served as the Youth and Community Engagement Manager for Mayor Brandon Scott. She holds a bachelor's degree in global journalism from Morgan State University and a master's degree in international development and global affairs from a collaborative program between the University of Baltimore and Coppin State University.
Hello.
Our moderator. Oh, sorry. Thank you for joining us. We're very excited to have you here. Our moderator, I'm gonna hand the reins over to, is Sonia Cho. I introduced Sonia earlier today, and our chat mod, who is going to help us make sure that we get any questions funneled to the group, is Thomas Chapman from the AG's office. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Sonia, and I think we're ready to go.
Thanks, Elizabeth, for the lovely introduction. To the guests, Jennifer and Jamie, I cannot express how grateful I am that you are spending time with us to chat about this issue that was kind of my brainchild. I, having now gone through the executive nominations process a couple of times for the MSBCA, I now have some understanding of the process and everything that goes into what it is that you guys do. But before that, I can honestly say that, I didn't know the process necessarily, but I had no kind of appreciation for the nature and scope of all of the kind of opportunities that are available for citizens and especially lawyers in general. This room, or I should say this screen, is full of lawyers who are public servants at different levels and levels of government throughout locations in Maryland. And I really didn't know that there were things that you can get involved in at the state government level for any type of interest or, pet project or whatever it is that drives you, and really get engaged in a meaningful way. And so I was hoping that you guys today could be sort of the ambassadors from the governor's office to explain and kind of talk about all the opportunities that are out there for people to become more engaged, kind of talk about the process and what it is that the roles that you fulfill in that process, as well as any kind of philosophy that you put yourselves, that you put into in fulfilling your roles. I know it's a very broad kind of question, but I want this more to be sort of an engaging conversation, and I'm going to throw out some questions to kind of help it along. But I would really love it for you to kind of just start talking about what it is that you do and what the process involves. And so I know Jennifer is more obviously very engaged on the judicial nominations committee work, and Jamie, on behalf of the governor's office, she does all of the outreach, that I'm very interested in. But specifically for this session, she'd be speaking to the executive nominations side of the appointments as well, all the work that you can do for different boards and commissions. So Jennifer, maybe would you like to get started?
Sure, happy to. And I just want to say hello to everyone. I don't see faces, but I see some familiar names. here from my time at the Attorney General's office. So hi, everyone. Right, you hit the nail on the head, Sonia. We in the Office of Legal Counsel, we give a lot of advice to the Appointments Office on a regular basis, but that is sort of beyond the scope of this presentation. And our main role in appointments is in judicial nominating, so populating the judicial nominating commissions, and then working on the judicial appointments process with the governor. So for the judicial nominating commissions, and I won't go too heavy into process yet, but I'll just speak about our philosophy. We really came in wanting to diversify the commissions, both in terms of race, gender, ethnic background, those sorts of demographic components, but also in terms of people's area of practice. So, one thing that we wanted to avoid was the appearance that it's just, everyone on the judicial nominating commissions are people who know everybody in the courthouse and know everybody, and sort of this like little inside baseball group of folks, and trying to bring a diversity of background in the legal profession and people's experiences in the counties to the commissions, while keeping them mainly composed of lawyers who have practiced in the relevant courthouses. So that has been an interesting and challenging endeavor, and we work very closely with the Appointments Office in doing that. The Appointments Office is really fantastic at I'm sure Jamie will talk more about this, but the Appointments Office established a portal through which everybody, no matter what appointment you're being considered for, has to submit an application. And so they are able to then go through and search for folks who live in different counties and sort of determine what their backgrounds are and whether they'd be appropriate for either an appointment to a JNC, if they hadn't already applied, or possibly some other board or commission that required a legal background. And so that has been extremely helpful in helping us ensure that we have the right sort of diversity and background in our on the JNCs. And we work, as I said, we work closely with appointments to populate those commissions. So that's, I'll sort of put that out as an introduction just to, what our office's main role. And then just add one more thing before I turn it over to Jamie, which is that something that we did this year for the first time, or not this year, I'm sorry, this in creating the executive order that established the judicial nominating commissions and the process for that. We created a code of conduct, like an ethical code that the members of the JNCs would have to sign, which hadn't existed before. And so that was another way of sort of ensuring fairness and transparency in the selection of the applicants who would proceed, the judicial applicants who would proceed to be considered by the governor. So that's just some ways that we've tried to diversify the process, make it a little bit more transparent, but also remove, I guess I would just say a more egalitarian sort of system for making judicial appointments.
Jamie? She disappeared.
Oh, she's still here, but she's just
Off the screen.
Yeah. There she is.
I'm sorry, I tried to unmute and then fix my video. So thank you guys for thank you so much, Sonia, for having me, and for your whole entire team and your staff. It is such a pleasure to be here today and to serve on behalf of the Appointments Office. And so Jennifer, she kind of like summed a lot of the things up that, in regards to our portal, like that's really what we like to speak to, with this administration, that we have done something that no administration has done before, where we've had this portal where it's open for all Marylanders. Anyone can apply. Anyone can apply for up to 10 boards. And so that means that you just need to be able to upload, like go into the portal and upload your information. Like it's really simple. It's, it's your resume, it's your cover letter, any other information, public service materials that you think that might level set you. And also, that we also have a part in the portal where there's a portion for recommendations, where folks, even if maybe you're a person that's not able to serve right now, your capacity is, you know, it's to its max at this particular time. So but other people that are in a position to serve. So this portal is open for recommendations, where if you want to recommend someone to serve, and this portal will populate and prompt the person who you're recommending to apply and all the things. And so again, we like to make sure all of our boards are just super diverse, that they are, full of candidates that represent all Marylanders, that look like every single person on this call, from women to men to age to demographics to where you live. All of those things are factors. Before this administration, it was not so diverse, and there was a certain pool of folks that were getting these appointments. And so now, I like to say what Secretary Edwards used to always say, people always say, what is so important about the appointments, and, what makes it super significant? When people say that they made the rules so we couldn't, or they made the rules for X, Y, and Z, or they made it so that this couldn't happen. So the boards and commissions in the state of Maryland are the people that are the days, the people that really make the rules and make the decisions for us. And so again, our portal is very simple. It's govappointments.maryland.gov. And, it's open for everyone to apply. And we have an amazing placement analyst and a team of folks that will navigate people who want to apply, to our boards and commissions if they are having difficulty. So there's someone on the other end to still help you through the process. And just as the outreach director, I'll sum it up. I not only, one of my larger lifts are making sure that we get the information out there to the public. Like, I make sure that whatever we have on our LinkedIn page, we've now transitioned to Instagram, but whatever we connect with other offices in regards to boards and commissions and agencies that are doing work and press releases, or when the governor, when someone's been appointed, and those things, or Senate nominations and all of those things. So my role is to make sure that we uplift the work and we tell the story of the appointments office outside of the engagement portion, where we do events of this nature, or that I'm out in the public facing and constantly networking and finding people that want to serve in the capacity of service.
Okay, because I mean, at least from my personal experience, it wasn't that these opportunities weren't there before. It's just that people just didn't know about them. And other than, I know as the outreach director, you go out there and kind of promote the existence of these opportunities and kind of tell the public what's out there. But is there something that you are doing differently that is having a greater impact in terms of, awareness, raising awareness that there is this place that you can go to and kind of volunteer your services, to serve on these boards and commissions and apply online? I think it's not the access issue. I think it's kind of the awareness issue for me.
So I think on a large scale, our comms team, the governor's comm team, they, promoted various ways and through events that we have. But what we do on a different level, how we actually get the word out, we have something called POCs, point of contacts. And the point of contacts are the people that are connected to the boards and commissions, right? So these are your agency heads and your directors and your folks that are leading the work in these particular industries, whether it's judicial industry or whatever it is, the folks that are leading the work. And because the boards and commissions are normally the partners a lot of the times, right, that they developed. And so we use point of contacts to use their networks, which are the folks that are generally in that particular lane, so to speak, like whatever that work is. So if it's the plumbing board, if it's something dealing with plumbers, we would deal with folks that the point of contact that deals with just plumbing only. So I have one of our placement coordinator on the call to answer more on the invite to help answer more questions at the end about specifics. But we use point of contacts to get the information out. We have the governor's larger scale of a comms teams. We are on, like I said, social media, but we have our website. But I think more than anything, we were able to, so when the Moore Miller administration took office, they opened this portal. They talked about people who wanted to serve. And there was thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of Marylanders that went into this portal that wanted to serve under the Moore Mill administration. That initial jump, that initial pool of folks was our initial lift to be able to tell folks about, hey, we have this portal. If you want to serve, go here. And so that really generated our portal to the next level. And so we really haven't looked back since that point. But of course, we could do more. Maryland's, you know, we talk about more, but the Senate, we actually have partners in the Senate that when we have the Senate confirmations, like our Senate partners and our board chairs and our committee, our executive noms committee, they also promote the work. So people find out about it as well. So there are various ways that we try to get the word out, but it's always, you know, more opportunity and, you know, platforms like this that we look forward to talking on.
And I'll just second what Jamie said, like just a very small example of this is my co-deputy in the legal counsel's office submitted her resume to work in the governor's office through the initial sort of transition portal that was created to find people who were interested in serving in the administration. So this is, you know, this wasn't like everybody knew everybody. I mean, they really went and looked for talent for people who submitted their information. And so, you know, I think that's just one example of what Jamie's talking about, of really trying to enhance access and for folks who wouldn't maybe otherwise know who to contact to, you know, submit a resume to work in the governor's office.
And you were talking about Natalia.
Yeah.
Yeah, she has a really lovely story. Yeah, a whole explanation about how she ended up there. And she's literally kind of exhibit A of how that process worked out. So maybe we can get started a little bit more on sort of the process, right? Like, can you maybe speak to how to demystify the process for us? Somebody applies for, you know, let's say to get on the JNC or become one of the board members or commissioners or whatever on the executive nom side. What happens? You float it out there through the portal. What happens then? And maybe Crystal has a question.
I can help Jamie. I can help you guys with some of these answers. Hello, everyone. I'm Crystal Henry, placement coordinator for the Governor's Appointments Office. So I'm going to use, let's use the Professional Board of Engineers as an example. So with each board, with majority of the boards, they have consumer seats and professional seats. So depending on what you're applying for and what legislation says, that's how we figure out who we are choosing to serve on these boards and commissions. So we are guided by legislation. Then we look at resumes. So it's very interesting because I was out and about at a prom send-off. And I heard some students, they are in AP courses, they are in engineering in high school. And I said, hey, we have some student seats for high schoolers on this and that board. Apply. And I talked to their parents and I had them apply. So we look at the legislation against the student adult resumes and make a decision. So we're guided by legislation first.
Which ones are the ones for high school? I've got a high schooler.
Oh,
I didn't even see. This is a thing I didn't even know.
Yeah, I definitely can send you a whole list. And we have
Perfect.
their 1-year appointments and we have some seats coming up next year. So I
Fantastic.
definitely can send you a list. And
right.
I also had a mom and I encouraged her to apply to a consumer seat. She's a stay-at-home mom. And she said, I'm just a mom. I said, what? You are not just a mom. This is the State Board of Plumbing. Do you use plumbing? Do you use water in your home? Yes. So you can speak from the consumer point of view about what this board needs to do to make sure that every plumber in the state of Maryland treats their consumers correctly and are guided by legislation. So we don't look at people like they're just a mom or just a this or just a that. Your resume with the legislation is what guides us.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I will echo there is and so like your question was, what happens once people apply? So you get in this portal, you apply, you upload your resume, your cover letter, all the things, and then you can apply to 10 boards. And like Crystal said, even though you apply, what happens is her team, they're experts in the statutory language. And so even though you apply for a board, they have to make sure that they're looking at folks that fit the particular whatever the seat is. And so once that happens, and let's just say you are selected or you're considered, then the next step is that, you go through a vetting process. I think and correct me if I'm wrong, Crystal. So you go through the vetting process. And then if you go through the vetting process, just based on whatever that particular seat is, because some boards are Senate confirmable. So you still have to go be nominated. And of course, the governor's looking at all of these folks, because we technically use the portal to recommend folks to the governor. The governor ultimately makes the decision. Like, we're not the decision makers. We're just the curators that navigate this portal to lift up the information to the governor and the lieutenant governor for them to, they're appointed by the governor, but then of course, there's a network across the board in our principal leadership. So we do, it's almost like we use the portal to do the fishing for them. And so the governor ultimately makes a decision, and based on whatever, the statutory language is, what the Senate has to confirm and all those things, that would be the next step to either be confirmed by the Senate or go through the vetting process and still, have all of your paperwork submitted in order to be confirmed in your particular seat.
Exactly. And to add to that, we have a rolling application process, which means we take applications 365 days of a year. So even if the board is full and does not have any space, because you never know when a vacancy will arise. So we always take applications, and we get so many in, it doesn't hurt to email gov.appointments and say, hey team, hey Crystal, hey Jamie, is this board full? I applied to the professional board of engineers, and I could tell you, hey, this board is full. We are not looking at applicants right now, but let me pull your resume and tell you what boards we might have available for you. So it's just opening the door of communication and talking through it.
Perfect. You've already gone through maybe an answer to 3, 4, 5 of my questions on the list. I really appreciate that, Crystal. We have a couple of questions already on the chat. If we want to move on to those, we can hit some of the other more boring points later, if you want to look at it that way. Thomas?
Sure. So the first question from chat is that folks on this call might be particularly interested in opportunities for lawyers. Are there any opportunities to flag for attorneys apart from the JNCs?
Oh, I'll just briefly speak to that. Hi, Patrick. So I just went on the portal and clicked on the courts legal category, and a whole number of boards and commissions sort of popped up into, what the drop down menu. So there are, I guess, seats for lawyers on the accountability and implementation board, the nominating committee for that board, Office of State Advisory Council Administrative Hearings, the nominating commissions, as we talked about, the Correctional Ombudsman, the Ethics Commission, the Task Force to ensure the safety of judicial facilities, the general, there are many, Judicial Compensation Commission, the Commission on Judicial Disabilities. So there are many that, so I would recommend going, if you're interested in serving in that kind of capacity, going on and looking on the portal, and they're all there.
Yes, and we also have a board directory on appointments, our website. So you can look at our board directory. We have over 630 boards and commissions, and we would love some lawyers on there.
Yeah, so they both answered my questions. Jennifer talked about the boards, because I figured that would be a question since there would be lots of lawyers on the call. So those are the boards, as Jennifer stated, that, are specifically in our drop-down menu for lawyers or people that are, in that lane of work. And then, like Crystal said, there are 600 plus boards and commissions, because there are statute language for each board. Like there are lots of boards that may need a lawyer to sit in a particular seat, or you may need to have that background or knowledge to be able to serve. So that is a great question, and I was prepared to answer. So thank you. Thanks.
And it looks like Daniel from the governor's office has put the link to the board directory in the chat if folks want to look at that.
Yep.
And then we have another question, which is asking about the conflict of interest process, whether nominees or applicants go through conflicts check through the State Ethics Commission.
Yes, there is a conflict of interest form when you're filling out the application. Depending on which board you apply for, it asks for your conflict of interest, and we ask. So not only do when we're considering you for a board or commission, we share it with the POC, and we go over your accomplishments from your resume, and we also, the point of contact might call you depending on what the board is, to make sure there is no conflict of interest. So we ask that you disclose, and we also ask as well.
Any other questions? Thomas?
We got one more just a request for if there's a list of positions for high schoolers. So if there is a list, would be good to put that in the chat, but if not, just more.
I'll make sure I get it from Crystal.
Yeah.
But that's it for now.
No, but I was gonna say, Daniel, please drop our both of Crystal and I email address in the chat for folks, and then also let's make sure we give them our Gov appointments email address as well as the outreach email address. Let's just provide them with all the channels to get in touch with us.
All right. Any other questions for now? All right, thank you. But I'm gonna make sure I get the list of high school positions first, and then I'm kidding. So the kind of talking about the process a little bit more. You know, what are the kind of the steps from application to an appointment decision, right? I know there's vetting that happens, but from the applicant side, what can one expect? How the process to sort of play out? Or are you just kind of sitting there waiting to hear back from someone, or what goes on?
I think me and Jamie will both answer to this, but it might seem like a long process from the applicant's side of view because every board has term dates, right? So I'm currently vetting for terms that end in June, July, and August. So what may seem long to the applicant is really a short time frame for us. So we go through putting your application in, pulling your resume for that particular board, well, looking at the roster, seeing what the board needs. Do they need a lawyer? Do they need more women? Do they need a lawyer in a different field because the people that's the current lawyers may be practicing in one field. So we look at the roster and see what the board is missing, pull the applicant's resume, share it with the POC, have a talk with them, vet the applicant, submit it to the leadership team, and it goes from there.
Okay.
And if it's Senate confirmable will take longer than a general appointment. Senate confirmable seats, we appoint to those during January and February. Our last day working on Senate confirmable boards is April the 8th. So with Senate confirmable seats, we can only appoint to those seats during legislative session unless it's a vacancy. So if there's no vacancy on that board, if the members are in holdover, we are not looking to appoint until legislative session begins. So it may seem like a long waiting time, but in our world, on the other side of the computer screen, we don't have enough time.
We're just speaking for the audience. I understand it looks very differently from that side because I'm sure you get pestering emails and inquiries all the time about what's going on with this or that. But, on the other side of the fence, it's the waiting is the toughest. So depending on, if you're trying to make career transitions or whatever it is that you're looking to do.
But our office is very responsive. If you send an email, we have a rule that we check GovDot appointments in the morning and we check GovDot appointments before we leave for the end of our shift. So if you have a question or if you feel like it's taking a long time, you can always send us an email.
Okay, thank you. So the waiting, if you want to call it that, really depends on when the terms are expiring for, depending on the position that you're applying for. I got you. Does the governor actually look at all recommendations? Yes.
Governor has access to the portal, so he can look at anything that he would like to look at. Like, he can look at anything that's in that portal he has access to. And like we said, all of our seats they're appointed by the governor. So that's what we use the portal for, because they're folks that we put like this. He has access. And we always recommend every single qualified person. If you meet the statute, you get recommended. So there may be a list of folks that only 150 people may, qualify for, versus a seat that there are 200 folks that qualify for, versus the list where there are only 15 people that qualify for it, based on the statute and whatever that particular language is that, lies within. So it just depends. But if you qualify and you meet the statute that we're looking for, you are recommended.
Yes. And some of the legislation says we must present 3 people per seat for the governor to choose from. So we might have 3 qualified candidates for 1 seat, but legislation says we have to present 3 to the governor. So we present those 3 and the governor makes his choice. So yes, Jamie is.
I'll speak to the Judicial Nominating Commission's process. So, the Office of Legal Counsel receives the recommendations from the local bar, goes through the portal to find all of the folks who have applied through the portal. We do outreach to local representatives or, other lawyers that we may know in the counties that we're looking to populate a JNC. We will get, input from them. And then once we have all of the resumes, we put together, along with appointments, a list of potential nominees. In the beginning of the governor's term, we would meet with him to really explain to him, because he'll say all the time, "I'm not a lawyer," but he loves talking to lawyers, and so explain why having this diversity of background in the legal profession is important, and what different skill sets bring to the table in terms of, vetting judicial candidates. And we've gotten to the point where, we can submit a memo explaining some of these things, but all of, biographical information, and the governor selects, makes a decision on them. So he is actively involved.
Does, or how much, I guess it's 2 questions, do political affiliations factor into the decisions by the governor, appointments decisions? Maybe the governor will be the one to speak to that, but does it matter?
Well, I'll tell you this. We have senators and local state officials and delegates, people who go into the portal and recommend people to serve. So there is a connection. They are allowed to lift up people in their line of work to serve. So, is there a political connection? Yes, but it's open for all.
And we do try to have a diversity in the in the JNCs too.
Diversity of politics. Well, one question I had for you, not necessarily about maybe you can kind of digress a little bit right now, is sort of what are your biggest challenges in doing your jobs as you're going out there, doing these outreach and trying to get the word out and bring awareness, and this is kind of what we're trying to accomplish. Are there any particular challenges that you face that you maybe want to speak to?
Not
Like
for
for
me.
instance, well, let's say for like JNC, right? There's gotta be places throughout the state of Maryland where we just don't have that as much activity in that regard as some of the other districts, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that
But you still have to do all this work.
that is the biggest challenge, I would say, for the JNCs, is that if you're in, a more remote or rural area, it can be harder to find, sort of enough lawyers who are not like all working at the same law firm or all working at the state's attorney's office together to populate the JNCs, because we do try to really limit, to the extent possible and practicable, having two people from the same law firm serve.
Yeah.
And that's where the appointments office has really been so helpful, because even if we don't have enough applications in the portal for us to really have a robust selection process, they do a ton of outreach to folks in those areas that they've either know through other appointments to boards and commissions, local politicians on both sides of the aisle, to get recommendations. And then we will sometimes do outreach to those lawyers or lay people that they've recommended, and then go from there, encourage them to apply, and then go through our usual sort of rigorous selection process. But yeah, that I would say is the biggest challenge, is just finding sometimes a diverse group of folks to apply.
Is there a term limit to how long people might serve on the JNC? I don't actually know the answer.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. The term is for like the governor's term. So, if somebody, so there's not a, so the JNC will come to an end at the end of the governor's term, and then if he wins re-election, we would sort of populate them anew. But I think folks would sort of be in a bit of a holdover until we came up with a new list of people.
Yeah.
But I think, and I'm not sure, and I'm not sure in prior administrations if they would just sort of start from scratch at the beginning of a new term, or have the board submit new names. That's probably the case, but yeah, we haven't gotten there yet. But
I always felt like that's something I should know, but I never really could figure out how to know about that. So, I mean, if it's tied to the governor's term, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, in the EO, it is the term is the length of the governor's term.
Earlier, Crystal, correct me if I'm wrong, you look like you were going to say something.
I forgot
Maybe
what
to
I
an
was going
earlier
to say.
Challenges in your work.
I think I don't have that many challenges. I think what has helped our team is wherever we go, we talk about our job. So we could be in a grocery store and tell someone about our job. I do wish we had more applicants from rural counties for some of these the labor boards that we have, plumbing, electrician, HVAC. So driving more rural counties to those seats. But I've been working with labor. We have been putting the calls out and really driving up the application portal. So I'm excited about that.
Jamie, did you want to add?
And so I think Crystal, she pretty much just summed it up for me. Yes.
Okay. Other than maybe for people who hesitate, and I suppose I'm just speaking kind of for myself and my prior experience, not knowing anything about these opportunities and kind of coming into it and retroactively realizing there's all these things that I've been sort of missing out on that I could have participated in. For those people who just don't, who would be interested in serving in some capacity but don't know how to get started, do you have any sort of recommendations for advice for those folks? And for those people who may want to participate in some way but don't necessarily want to commit to a full-on, formal governor's appointment process, are there other kind of less formal, roles or positions that are available that you guys, from the governor's office get involved in?
Sure.
Email. Oh, I'm sorry, Jamie.
Okay.
Email. We are always available by email. If you have a question, email us. We also have boards and commissions and work groups that require a smaller amount of time. We have boards like the building rehabilitation that meet once a year. We have boards that only meet virtually. So it's just emailing and calling, and we can fill you.
I can't believe you just did that to yourself, but okay, you're just gonna get you're gonna get a lot of emails.
Yeah. The fact have,
Maybe Daniel can throw in the email address in the chat. We're gonna start spamming Crystal with emails. That would be really great.
I'll
Well,
just
looks like-
also throw out, since everyone here, I think pretty much is a lawyer, I would assume, keep an
Yes.
eye out for executive orders that create boards, commissions that have less, formal requirements and responsibilities, where you don't go through the Senate confirmation process, you don't take the oath, things that, where the time limit is not as significant, or the time commitment is not as significant, and sort of track those and see if there's anything that would be interesting to you, to bring your expertise to. Of course, many of these, you don't have to be a lawyer, but the governor has, authority to appoint a number of people who are, involved in different aspects of professions or interest areas. So, it's just something to sort of keep an eye on too. So those tend to be less formal.
Thank you. Have there been many boards and commissions that have been added since the new administration? I say new, but this administration has added.
By executive order? Or
Yeah.
Yeah, there have
I guess I didn't realize that was a thing that happens.
Yeah.
Either. I don't know a lot of things.
For example, there are this just came to mind. There are a handful of commissions that we sort of dub the ethnic commissions that sit within the governor's office of community initiatives, and those are made up of folks. Those are made up of folks who are from particular ethnic backgrounds or the communities, and they informally advise the governor on issues that are important to those communities. And so, that sorts of thing. Other task forces, like in the environmental space, and economic development, there have been quite a number, actually. So if you go and look on the governor's webpage, they have all of the executive orders, and you can look through and see which ones are creating task forces, work groups. Yeah, many of those.
Okay. Now let me, I'm just checking to see if there are any further questions in the chat. So let's suppose that somebody has been appointed to a seat on a board or commission or a committee. How do you, is there any kind of support that's given to the new appointees in terms of onboarding? Like, how do you figure out what you're supposed to do once you get there? Right?
Yes. Sorry. Yes, we do have an onboarding process, but once you leave our office, now you're in the hands of your board and commission. So we introduce you to the executive director, the point of contact for the board, and they have their own onboarding. So they will email the new member, set up an appointment, whether it's in person or virtual, to onboard them.
So there is no kind of uniform system in place that tells you, you know, here's going to be the executive education. Now that you're an appointee, you can expect to do X, Y, Z. It just depends on the position.
Yes, so they do have that, but it comes from the board or the board that they're assigned to. So they will get all of that once they're appointed to that board.
And for the judicial nominating commissions, it's with the administrative office of the courts. So we have somebody there that we work with and that the appointments office works with, and she reaches out to every new commission member to onboard them, make sure they have the training and have signed the code of conduct, and you know, so yes, there is somebody there who guides them in that way.
I guess on the JNC side, it's a little bit more uniform though, right? Because it comes from one place. Yeah. All right. Yeah, because that was one of the questions that I got in a different meeting, talking about executive nominations and appointments, and the question was, you know, say you're interested in a commission that has to do with you know, environmental protection or whatever, but once you get on, what am I supposed to do? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? And so that was kind of a curious, very practically useful information, but it's one that I did not know the answer to. So it just depends. Okay.
I think if the appointment office had to be responsible for that too, they would all run screaming from the building. That would be an enormous lift to have all of that information.
And so I guess along with those, whatever training that might be required would be provided by the different agencies or the boards and commissions that are in question. Okay.
Yeah, that's, and you know, I was, as you said at the top, I was principal counsel to the Maryland Higher Education Commission. So when folks would be appointed to the Maryland Higher Education Commission, we would have some, you know, training session for folks to, you know, give them all the information that they would need about meetings, where to go, where to, you know, like, then at the time, many of them were virtual. So, and so, yes, that is usually the responsibility of the
AG. If there is an arm of AG that is responsible.
Well, yeah, or staff. I mean, you know, we would sort of, the lawyers would sort of give some of the more, you know, substantive background on the legal issues that might come before them, but then the administrative folks would sort of give them the onboarding in terms of all of the administrative tasks and procedures that are involved. But yes, they received a good bit of training information.
Can applicants reapply if not selected the first time?
So their application is always in the system because it's a rolling application process. So if they're not considered for that board or commission, they can be considered for many of our other boards and commissions. So yes, that's why you can put up to 10 boards and commissions in your cart. And if you want to take one out to sub it out for something different, you can.
Are there positions that require interviews? Personally meeting with the appointments office or maybe the counsel to the governor, or maybe even the governor?
Some people, well, the first step will be meeting with the Secretary of Appointments, and that's Secretary Molly Byron. So there are some appointments that do require an interview process. And perhaps, you know, there may be a next step where she may pull folks onto the panel, other people and principals or other secretaries. It's just based on the nature of the appointment. And then some of those appointments may need to meet directly with the governor.
Okay, but is that something that you would be able to find out before you apply to that position, or something that just needs to kind of go through the process once you float your name out there?
I mean, it's rare that very few of the appointments, it's not a large percentage of folks that have to go through that process, the interview process, but some of the statute language does state that, or based on, whatever's happening in the particular climate, or, whatever's happening during the administration, it may be a level of sensitivity at that particular time where folks are being interviewed for a particular board, where that may be an area of focus for the state. So it just depends on multiple factors. But that's not really, most of the statute language will tell you what the steps are for your appointment. But in some cases, there's a next level, and senators also have the opportunity. If you're a Senate confirmable appointment, the state senators can reach out to you as a possible appointee to meet with you as well. So it's not so much as an interview process, but also you have to look at it somewhat like an interview.
Okay, thank you. But those are more the exception than the rule. But most positions can be filled just on resumes and paper qualifications.
Yes, but some of our boards, like the Board of Land Surveyors, they like to have a phone interview or virtual interview just to get to know the particular candidate, to make sure that they will fit well with the board and have the proper credentials. So it just really matters board by board.
Okay. And then on the JNC side,
yeah, specific to the JNCs, no, there isn't usually a formal interview process to select members for the JNC. Occasionally, we will talk to people, reach out to people to ensure that they are, qualified to serve as a chair or what have you. But for the most part, the interviews that happen with the governor are the judicial applicants.
the judicial nominees and not the, okay, so, but then I guess in terms of vetting the candidates for consideration on the JNC, is it basically the deputy counsel that are responsible for kind of doing all the vetting and determine who's gonna?
Yeah, we work with the appointments office to do a lot of the vetting. They're really experts at that. But in terms of the qualifications, yeah, the legal office does the vetting.
Okay. I think that's pretty much satisfies my curiosity. All of my questions have been answered without me asking, for the most part. Does anybody else have questions for these wonderful women leaders from our governor's office? I hope that sort of helped demystify some of this process that can be pretty confusing. Elizabeth?
So I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, and I kind of feel like this is a missed opportunity. So I'm gonna invite anybody to hop in with a question before we let everyone return to their busy day jobs. Speak now.
Or you could just raise your hand and say, I want in,
Or
instead
just
of
unmute yourself
sending
and go.
emails or whatever.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, the call to communicate with us, to submit an application. It is, I have been so deeply impressed with how open the administration is to bringing in new folks to serve in these roles. The question about, is OAG prohibited from sitting on government boards outside work, I'm seeing in the chat. I will just say that we do have folks from the Attorney General who work in the Attorney General's office who have served on the JNCs. And so typically that's something that someone might have to clear through their supervisor or such, but we definitely do have folks from OAG on those commissions.
And does it have anything to do with secondary employment? I mean, if it's a paid position, it may raise a flag for the Ethics Commission, and you might have to clear through that. But
it is considered secondary employment, but that's a fairly straightforward process that happens through your your supervisor has to, you fill out a secondary employment form on the ethics, which I think is on the Ethics Commission website. Your supervisor would approve or not approve. And then I think then the form is submitted to the Ethics Commission. But unless you're I don't know, unless you're working in the part of OAG that regulates court somehow or gives advice to judges, then I don't, there really wouldn't be a conflict there for the most part.
Great question. Thank you.
It looks like Patrick Hughes, one of our former council members, has also added into the chat there. So, all right, any other questions from the group? All right, I can't thank all of you enough, especially Crystal, because I thank you for jumping in. This has been
Thank you so
wonderful,
much.
and I really appreciate you stopping your real jobs to come and talk to us and answer questions for us. So, with that, hey, next year, same time, same place.
And I would just warn you against the tsunami of emails that are likely to come your way. So make sure you check before you leave for the day, Crystal.
Listen, Jamie and I are already G-chatting to look out for Gov. Appointments. So we already sent out the alert, and be patient with us because it's Friday, so we won't answer you until Monday.
Thank you so very much.
Thank
I
you
really
all.
appreciate your time.
Thank you all.